So, I have the privilege here to sit with Ariel Dougherty, Frazer Dougherty's daughter, and Joe Delano. And I'd like to call him Joe Dougherty for the sake of this gathering. But in more ways than one, this is an extension of my feelings and my reservations, and also a huge chunk of my life being a part of the passage that Frazer Dougherty took and influenced so many people by doing so. So to have, and by the way, we're just about to celebrate his 99th birthday. I think it's June 17 or 16. 16. So there's no better gathering than sitting with Ariel and Joe here and trying to directly and indirectly decipher our feeling towards Frazer Dougherty. So first of all, Ariel and Joe, thank you so much for making this possible. And why don't you just start by saying a few sentences about, we haven't seen you in a long time at LTV. You have also your own creative artistic journey as far as LTV is concerned. So we'd like to talk about that and so many other things. So how are you doing this afternoon?
We're doing great. Joe is actually traveling through here on his way to Flagstaff, Arizona. So when I found out that you do the show Hello, Hello, I was just astounded to learn that the show still goes on. This is a question that would be good to research, but might this be the longest standing show in public access history? I don't know. I have no idea. but I was involved in the hope for public access in the early 70s in New York City. We had the vision that and hope that there would be a head-end station in Manhattan in every community. And a organization that I started, Women Make Movies, we named our workshop the Chelsea Picture Station in the anticipation that we would be a head-end station someday. And of course, our vision was great, and the possibility has not quite come to fruition yet. Almost 50 years later. But I had sort of worked through jobs in the Catskills and came to LTV in 1987, the very beginning of 87, to do development work.
That's at the old facility at Spring Spice Fireplace Road.
Right, exactly. We were still at the dump, as Francis Ann used to call it. Everybody called it that, but Francis Ann especially called it the dump. And I worked doing development work for a few years, but then Frazer and I didn't always see eye to eye about everything.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. But it's interesting to think, how did it come about to become something that extends just the average feeling or desire of someone to create or to serve the public? Because Frazer took it to heights that are just almost unfamiliar to the average person out there. So that level of intensity, how was it? How did it come to be the way we all realize that it is?
Well, I think one of the things about East Hampton is that prior to the development of cable, which had by the mid 80s become fairly developed, all your broadcasts that you got in East Hampton came from New Haven, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. So there's really was this media disparity that there you were, on the fringes of New York State, really, and all your media that you got was from Connecticut. In fact, I lived in the Catskills for many years, and the mountain was behind me, so I didn't get Albany, and we were too far from New York City. So I also got New Haven, Connecticut media in the mm-hmm. middle of the Catskills. So when LTV developed, there was local news that it would capture and develop and create a a, 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 a community of media exchange within the local community.
So, for example, like Joe, you said you joined in what, early 90s, was it? Or
Yeah, so I you know, of his grandchildren, he had a few older ones, and I was one of the younger grandchildren, and a few of my cousins did basically like a summer internship at LTV before me. So I think there were 3 or 4 of us that spent a whole summer out there. So I lived in New York City. I think it was after my freshman year of college. I was invited, or there was talk of me coming out to live with Frazer and Francis Ann at their house on Drew Lane.
on Drew Lane, yeah.
Which, just that house kind of was part of a strange, we lived in an apartment in New York City, and my mom and my dad were both in education, and we kind of had a different life. And then we would go out to this house in East Hampton, and, it was sort of like a different world.
Oh yeah, it was heavenly.
Yeah, it was, it was,
Say the least.
so I spent a summer out there, and basically, I think I got paid by, by LTV or by Frazer, I got like $10 an hour, and I worked 40 hours a week and sort of doing all sorts of internship type stuff. And I met a bunch of people out there. Some people I'm still friends with through Facebook and Instagram, some people that are my age, a guy named Rick, a young man named Rick something. He does filming with, I forget another guy's name, Sabina's husband.
Oh yeah, they have Matt.
Yeah, so they do a lot of filming. So one of Matt's colleagues is a guy named Rick, a young Black guy who's probably about my age, early 40s, but he lives out there. But, I went out there and I spent, I would get up with Frazer in the morning. I think I was telling Ariel in the beginning of the summer, I would get up with him at 5:30, and I would go to the—
That's late, by the way.
Yeah. What did you say?
5:30 was late for him to wake up.
Yeah, he would always be, he would say, if you're not up by this time, I'm leaving. And I did it a few times, and I would go to the diner with him, and he would sit with, there were 4 or 5 other people around his age. They were all, I don't know, I don't think they were really farmers, but they kept that kind of farming time. Yeah,
and I saw them later on at a later stage. It's interesting because you go ahead, finish.
Oh no, I just said, I would go and work and do all sorts of little pretty monotonous tasks. I think I relabeled a lot of the VHS library. Yes,
of course.
And
which I happen to have most of it really in the form of VHS with his handwriting and everything.
Yes.
It's like, which I find the most appealing possible. Not less important than the contents of the tape. Those labeling, his handwriting, so precious.
Yeah, I think I did. There were a few things that I got to do. I think I got to help film or man some of the cameras during a few shows, various shows that people from the community did. I'm sort of, some of it's coming back to me as we talk about it, and as we, as I remember the building more. But yeah, I spent a summer there, and I socialized with some people, but I was a 18 or 19-year-old college student at the time. So my main people were Frazer and Francis Ann at night. So it was a little bit of a isolated summer.
Of course, yes. And but Ariel, I always wonder, being the daughter of Frazer Dougherty, again, I want to go to the concept of public access. Obviously, your introduction of public access came somewhat firstly from your dad. I wonder what, or at least it formed.
No, at that point, no, my introduction was really in New York City as filmmaker beforehand, and but I think Frazer believes very strongly, and he talks about it as the soapbox for the people, and and I think that's still a viable phenomena about public access. And
what flavors did he add to your understanding of that concept?
Well, I think that the East Hampton community is fairly unique, and I think the level of involvement was very high. There, at one point, I know that this would be probably in the early 90s. The Democratic, I think it was the Democratic Party, did a questionnaire and that one of their throwaway questions was how many people watched LTV, and it was like 50%, which in public access terminology is huge.
Yes.
So and I would presume that you still have a very high viewership.
Oh yeah, I mean, I cannot walk in Montauk without at least 2,000 people approaching me and thanking me for, and people who knew the show from the times of Frazer and knew
Really?
they approached. Oh yeah, yeah,
That's
you'll be
great.
surprised.
That's wonderful.
A woman in the bank with the mask told me I wanted to cash a check and I thought there was a problem with the check, and she looked at me and she said, "I really want to thank you." And I said, "What is she going to thank me for?" With the mask. She said, "I recognize your voice and I want to tell you, I really watch the show. I really listen, you know." So there's much to, but you know, Frazer was someone that introduced that level of intensity. It's like he always used to approach me and tell me, "Let me tell you something very important." And then he would repeat himself, tell me things that he already told me hundreds of times. But for him, it's never enough. You have to hammer that concept. You cannot accept it as accept it as a given, but not that it's just going to thrive on its own behalf. You have
Right.
to wear it, feed it.
Right.
You have to make sure it's comfortable, that all the ingredients that is needed for it to thrive. That he was a natural when it came to that. God bless. I mean, he is natural, and still is.
Right, right. Well, I think one of his sort of basic principles, which he would say around use of an automobile, you know, is you return it to its owner. You're borrowing it. You return it to its owner in better condition than you borrowed it. And I think that, you know, same principle, you know, he addressed to LTV, you know, that you make your community better than, you know, when you found it. And you know, LTV is a vehicle for doing that, you know, from, you know, documenting the town board meetings. I mean, it was really a planning and zoning meeting that kicked LTV off. I mean, are you aware of this history? Yeah. Because I don't remember exactly what the issue was. Was it trailers? I don't, anyway, it was some planning and zoning issue and the community was up in arms and the meetings were huge.
That kicked them out of the first location?
No, there was just a lot of controversy about this issue within whatever was going on in planning and zoning, and people like Jill O'Keefe recorded the sessions, and you know, and then you know, things developed and whatever.
And just and I thought at first he wasn't taken seriously because people did not realize the extent of his devotion. And also, people don't realize that Frances Ann was really enthusiastic about it. She didn't follow and help because he was her husband. She really believed in that concept equally to him. So that's why this union I found to be a very unique. I don't think people realize that her involvement came from that level of conviction just as much as it came from Frazer.
Right.
I have a question for you about all of the old footage of Frazer's shows when he was doing Hello Hello. Are they all still on VHS, or have some of them been digitized? Or
well, the library, I don't know to what extent they have, but they took what they kept. I have about 1,200 of them.
Wow.
So yeah, and actually,
1,200.
oh yeah. So I would say about 2,500 hours of
Wow.
his. And yes, I didn't give up. And so during these last 5-6 months, I kind of became reacquainted with the material within the contents. And so that it's humbling, to say the least. He was just there, period.
I remember, I think, when I would be out in their house in East Hampton, and this is not just the summer that I worked at LTV, but other times, and I'm flipping the channels, watching TV at night, and I think I would pass LTV, and sometimes he would have reruns of old Hello shows on at night, and you'll just, I'll be going through the channels, and you just see Frazer either talking to the camera, in the studio, or interviewing someone, and it was just such a funny thing.
Yeah.
It was a very common thing to see. So
yeah, I did, and he did well. Indirectly, he made people become aware that, and I still do. Every morning, I still start the show by saying that we're continuing with the heritage of public access, and especially the heritage of the Hello show that's been on the air since 1983. I thank Francis Ann, and I pretty much, there's no show that goes by without me repeating those basic aspects of what public access should be all about, is all about, just the same way that Frazer. I have some people that say, enough is enough. They see me and say, wow, like we got the drill.
yeah.
But no, it's because every time I hear myself say that, then it's like an avenue to some new things that spring, new ideas, new subject matters.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
And by the way, the footage that you sent me, the link, was suddenly I forgot. It just was erased from my head. And I remember seeing most of what you sent me when it really happened.
The whole shows, right?
And you're so similar with your demeanor to Frazer. Really, on the screen, there's something that you carry your weight very comfortably, and your voice comes out effortlessly, and you're kind of together with that reality. You don't try to improve it or to make it look different than what it is.
Right. Well, that's why I went to the cards, and I would draw out my titles and the date, because also being at the anchor and controlling the title card, how to put the titles up, was more confusing to me. So I went the simple, basic route. But Frazer was really a leader of doing things in the anchor booth, which is a form of presentation in public access that I think is really an interesting art form. And more could be done by that. I mean, COVID has certainly provided us a very different view of how to do media. In fact, probably of all the art forms, film and video and television have evolved very positively under COVID, whereas some other art forms have had a harder time. We'll probably never stop doing streaming of video at this point, and movie theaters are feeling the pinch.
But it made it more high-powered, more condensed. So those Zoom meetings, I mean, I haven't done that many Zoom meetings, but I think it brought someone can become more focused in this kind of situation. And so I get to feel it now with the new outfit of that LTV provided me with. There's more, this condensed reality is sharpening my thoughts and the way I deliver my monologues or interviews, for that sake.
Right. Well, the other really interesting thing too by COVID is that we're freed up from the studio. So we get to see people's homes in a different kind of background. I mean, I was telling Joe earlier that with my brother, Frazer, we've had a lot of conversations about the art that's in back of people, and how interesting that is, and what pieces of art people have. So
I had one question for you. I'm not sure if you and Ariel spoke about it previously to today, but how in touch with you, or how in touch with Frazer have you been over the years or recently? And as he's becoming closer and closer to 100 years old, have you thought of trying to interview him, remotely for a show? I know that's a hard question.
I know, no, I mean, it's almost an impossibility to interview the guy. I interviewed him only once, and every question that I asked him, he answered a different question. He doesn't want to talk about public access. He just wants to talk about what he wants to talk.
Yeah.
But I told him about 3 months ago, something to ask him a question, get his approval for something that I'm very emotional when it comes to, like he is, Frazer Dougherty is the most emotional guy possible. Even though he comes across, I know the face expression, I understand, even though he comes across like he's a hard-headed guy, and you stand in his way and he will just like dismiss you instantly. He's who he is. But I'm very emotional, so sometimes I need to hear him tell me that it's okay. All the time that I've gave to LTV is not enough for me to be reassured just because I'm there for 3 or 4 decades. So I had a very interesting conversation. He was pretty much there with me. I mean, he was, I knew that I'm speaking to a person that's nearing 100, but I think, I don't get to talk to him as much as I wanted. It's a love-hate relationship between him and I. I don't know why. It's like the better I do, the more he's like this with me, instead of the other way around. Like I said, Frazer, if you like say that I'm doing just fine, that it just a little bit, it will run a long way.
Yeah.
Just a little bit sometimes.
I think, I can only imagine or like speculate, but that was a very important experience in his life. So I would think that he, when you said he's very emotional, I think you more than me, but he can sometimes probably be lacking emotion when he talks to family members, or, he just might not want to talk about those times, especially since he hasn't done the show in, like you said.
Yes, but he's the same person. Really.
Yeah.
That's what I love about him. He's not different. When he came to me to ask me to take the show, just briefly, he said, I want you to do the show for one reason and one reason only, is because I know you're going to do it if you say you will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all there is to him. He knew me as a person with conviction. I did all the night tapes of LTV for 10 years. I used to go out everywhere and film all the concerts at the Talk House and you name it.
Wow.
He knew that and I said, it was very tough for me to say yes. It was very demanding to think, every morning I'm going to be here like at 6:30? And then it was, the first 10 years was 2 hours every morning, 7 to 9. So like, wait a second. But I did, and I realized that it's a sigh of relief. And I said, my God, I made the guy happy.
That's
I
great.
couldn't believe that I made, even though he didn't admit it. He didn't even say that. But I knew I gave him something. He feels reassured, and that was a great feeling for me.
Yeah.
And
no, that's the art of passing on history and story, and how leadership and a program is in itself a hard process.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that was another reason why when I was I was really looking for images to put into making an artist book for Frazer's birthday called 10 Decades, and pulling out photographs. So that's what led me to LTV. And Jeannie Chip sent me the piece that Priscilla Potter had done, 100 photographs. I was supposed to send it to you. I think I forgot, but I will. Which is, and it was like, it brought back a lot of memories from, people that I knew, and then a lot of people I didn't know.
Yes, so we're kind of nearing the 28-minute mark almost, but let me just mention that we can, I spoke to Michael, and we can do a Zoom show, actually, when I'm actually doing the Hello show from the space that I'm doing it, and maybe in the future we can chat more like one-on-one, like really just like on the spot, discussing the concept of public access, the contribution by Frazer Dougherty that is endless. We can sit here for a long time to really count and measure the extent of his contribution. And you know what? It really is, when I speak of him or of the show or what I'm doing, I speak as if it is just today, not because it's 40 years old and we demand recognition and respect. It's because of it is what it is. And we want to make it clear to you that we understand that it's simple. It's just that you got to show up in order to make it happen. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the rest is Frazer Dougherty. Some of his tapes had the camera right here for 10 minutes without saying one word. And he's just like looking for things, and then you see his ear and his forehead and the side of his chin or whatever. And it wasn't because it was because what it was,
Right.
you know, day in, day out. And
But that's also a reference back to Andy Warhol.
yeah,
I mean,
correct.
So the medium, allowed, a different form of imagery to penetrate our lives, which is sort of normal. I mean,
And he exercised that in his own unique way. That's simple as that.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could go back in time and see some of the shows. And I guess one question is, I'm assuming you stream your show through ltv.org or ltv.com or something like that.
Yes, that's the VOD, the video on demand.
Okay.
But also, you can be in touch with me directly anyway, and we can see, if now I'm in the process of, transferring it to DVDs and then hard drive and all this. So it's a task, but I'm doing it. So
I think one of the tasks that I may have been involved in at LTV when I was an intern there was the beginning of transferring his VHS recordings to, the whatever at that time was digital.
It's Super VHS.
Yeah, right.
It went from VHS to Super VHS. But I think we're kind of almost in our 28th minute, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But let me just say that I feel so privileged to sit with the two of you, and you just like it's between the two of you, it's Frazer, period. And God bless, and we are so indebted to this individual, and of course each one of you has your own experience with LTV, and LTV is here to stay 24/7. That's what counts, really.
Thanks so much.
Well, congratulations. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and really, again, a pleasure. And I'm sure that there will be a continuation to this interaction.
Okay, great.
Well,
Okay, great. All the best. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.